Good morning. Welcome to Conversations About Our Community, hosted by United Way of Lancaster County. I'm Joel Janisewski, Director of Volunteerism and Community Listening, and I'm glad that you're with us today. United Way of Lancaster County works to advance education, economic mobility, and health of our community by mobilizing resources, people, and organizations. Conversations about our community bring community leaders to the table to discuss key issues in our community related to those areas of education, health, and economic mobility. Our goal is to bring people together to talk about things that matter in our community, to share information, knowledge, and wisdom, and to help provide a path forward to bettering the lives of everyone in our community. Today's conversation is about student homelessness in Lancaster County, and we're thrilled to have the panel assembled that we do today. Before we get going in our conversation, I'll let you know that our format is that we're going to start with a brief presentation that's going to be made by Lisette Rivera from the School District of Lancaster, and then that will be followed by a 45-minute moderated conversation. So there'll be a lot of time to hear from our panelists and also time for our audience to submit questions. So for the audience, that you're able to submit questions through the Q&A feature on the Zoom webinar. And we'll do our best to get to the questions that you submit. We'll look forward to your participation in that way in the conversation too. We're always interested in seeing what the audience has to say and wants to find out more from our panelists about. After our conversation today, that we'll be sending a follow-up email in a few days afterward with the recording to this conversation, and then also links to resources that get mentioned over the course of our conversation. Before we really begin, I want to acknowledge that our discussion today will include accounts of homelessness and related issues, and may include accounts of mental health struggles and other related issues. And so, please take care of yourself and utilize available resources as they're needed. Please know that it's okay to take a break or reach out to a friend or for professional support. And if you need to step away from the conversation, please do that at any point. We really care about your health and well-being. With that, I'm excited to welcome our panelists to our conversation today. And I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. And start with Melissa.
Sure. Thanks, Joel. I'm Melissa DeMotta. I am one of the supervisors for the Region 2 office of the Education for Children and Youth Experiencing Homelessness program here in Pennsylvania.
Hello, my name is Barbara Huggins. I work for the National Network for Youth. I'm their Community Strategies Associate, and I'm working in Lancaster and have been involved with the Lancaster Youth Action Board.
My name's Donnie. I'm one of the co-founding members of the Lancaster Youth Action Board, and I'm big on art and design in the program.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisette Rivera. I am the site coordinator for the Families in Transition program, as well as the foster care point of contact for the School District of Lancaster.
Thanks. Yeah, no, Lisette, I'll turn it over to you for our brief introductory presentation.
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys so much for having me. Greatly appreciate it. Let me just get a second here to share my screen. Okay. Are we okay? Everybody can see it? All right, great. Okay, so again, my name is Lisette Rivera. I work on behalf of the School District of Lancaster with the Families in Transition program. Our program specifically supports all of our students and family within our district who are currently experiencing homelessness. Okay. All right, so our mission for FIT, that's what I'm going to refer to, is to provide support to our students and families who are experiencing homelessness by reducing any barriers preventing our identified students from having a positive educational experience. While we do service our whole families holistically, our priority is making sure that the continuity of a student's education is at the forefront, especially since they are going through housing transition. A little bit about our program right now. This is what we're looking at for our current school year. So the students who are identified within our program, we have a total of about 651 identified students within our program. We have 49 non-students, 24 students that are residing within our district but are attending other schools. We have about 700 in totality, and then we're just in the month of April that we are currently serving. As I mentioned before, we are servicing the family in its totality. So we have about 370 parents and roughly about 1,100 so far this year that we have identified as receiving services within our FIT program. Our district currently receives Title I funding because 90% of our population are at the economically disadvantaged point for Lancaster County. So some of the things that we see often when we have a student that is experiencing transition with housing is they're unable to meet standard school enrollment requirements. They change schools very often. They come to school, they're hungry, they're tired, they're stressed out because of all the underlying factors that they're coming to school with every single day, and they come very vulnerable. And they have limited access to school supplies or a quiet place to be able to do any of their schoolwork because of the fact they are in transition. They have limited access to transportation, whether that be busing or even public transportation. And they lack adult support. And when I say that they lack adult support, it's not because our parents and guardians don't care. But what we've come to notice is that, when our families are experiencing this, a lot of them are in survival mode, right? And they're doing everything that they possibly can to make ends meet, whether that be working 2 or 3 jobs to be able to provide for their families. So while they do support in other ways, a child's academics for them might not be at the forefront because they're just trying to figure out what their next move is going to be. So when we talk about it, there's a lot of underlying factors and what it actually looks like. And often when we have families that come to us and they're looking to enroll, they are unable to meet the school requirements necessary for them, or the paperwork necessary for them to be able to enroll in our schools. Every single school district has required different paperwork. It's not the same for each district. They change schools often. Like I said, they are tired, stressed, they display attention-seeking behaviors, lack support with supplies, basic needs, transportation. They're chronically absent from school because either of their erratic tardiness or because they just don't have the transportation. Often their grades are declining. And they are scoring poorly on their assessments. And when their grades are declining, that's huge because education is our number one primary at the forefront for them to be able to have. And often they will drop out of school because I just feel like they are exhausted and that they feel like there's no resources available for them, which is not the case. And that's why we're all here to have this conversation. So we follow the federal law called McKinney-Vento, and it's established to ensure the continuity of education for students that are experiencing homelessness. Again, this is a federal law, and we'll get more into this when we start having our panel discussions. But what that basically means is that if any of our students are experiencing that they don't have a regular, or an adequate nighttime residence, they could be potentially qualifying for McKinney-Vento services. Fixed meaning that they're at the exact same place every single night. Regular meaning that they're laying their head down at the same place in the same pillow in the same house. Adequate meaning, is their house not overcrowded? Do they have water? Do they have running heat? Do they have electricity? Any students that qualify for one of those 3 are eligible for our services. And what that looks like is if they're in a shelter or in any type of substandard living, if they're living in a hotel, if they're working under migrant ed services, that could potentially qualify them for McKinney-Vento services and receiving support. If they've lost housing due to economic hardship, and a lot of our families, especially since COVID, have lost that. Things have changed drastically so much, and the services are out there for them to be supported. One of the biggest things that we try to implement is making sure that our students and our families in particular know the rights that they have under McKinney-Vento, and us acting as advocates and walking alongside them to make sure that we are advocating and that they are getting the education that they deserve to get, and that they're able to participate in any one of our schools, their extracurricular activities, being able to go to prom, go and attend sports, or be a part of their school play. They deserve all of that, and we support with that. So we make sure that they receive a free, appropriate public education, that they have the right to enroll immediately, regardless of the paperwork that is required, because we can help get that paperwork for them. We just want to get them in school as fast as we possibly can. That they receive transportation to their original school if they request it. And that is on a case-by-case determination. There's a lot of underlying factors that we looked at and we support with families to determine whether or not it is in the student's best interest to stay with us or to go to the original school. And that they receive comparable services, like we just talked about before, that they get the same rights as for their education and anything that goes along with it as a student who's not experiencing homelessness. That we give them a free lunch, and that our unaccompanied youth, which we'll talk about later, are able to go into school and claim as an independent student, regardless of their circumstances with their parent or guardian. They also have the right to dispute whether or not they are, in fact, McKinney-Vento. And I'm sure Melissa will talk a little bit about that when we get to that. So some of the current trends and barriers that we currently are seeing right now, and I just don't think it's just within here in School District of Lancaster. I believe that this is countywide. For us, it's a food and clothing insecurity. And the use of school buses, it does take a lot, and where there's a lack of school bus drivers, and oftentimes we have to utilize cab services to be able to get our students to school. I think countywide, I am pretty confident in saying that there's an affordable housing crisis that is currently happening, and because of that reason, our enrollment numbers have gone down because there's just no place for them to be able to afford to stay. A huge thing too is we are currently seeing unaccompanied youth, meaning our students who are on their own and don't have any type of adult supervision, specifically our students, males between the ages of 13 and 18. There's a very big gap of services for that age population, which we'll talk about. And our shelters are at capacity 100% of the time. So I've been in this position since 2017, and Lancaster City has the most shelters within our county. And there's never been a time where I've been able to refer a family to 211 and then be able to get into shelter that very same day. There's always some type of wait list that is occurring. And with all of that, mental health, that's huge. And being able for our students and our families to be able to access that with not having so much red tape or having to cut all the corners to be able to get those services that any basic human right should be entitled to. So this is me, and this is my counterpart, Jaylyn. And again, we're just committed to making sure that we serve every single student as best as we possibly can, and we just strive to make sure that we're person-centered and that they get the same basic human rights as anybody else should be able to get to. So thanks.
Thanks, Lisette. Thanks for your presentation and helping to contextualize student homelessness. here in, in Lancaster. Melissa, I have the first question for you. What role does the Education for Children and Youth Experiencing Homelessness program play in our area?
Well, we are a regional program, and we're contracted through the Pennsylvania Department of Education to administer the federal homeless education law. Lisette has done a great job in describing what this law is, the McKinney-Vento Act, and that it was established to ensure continuity of education for displaced students. So that is our primary role, is making sure that these students have all barriers to their education broken down. And being a regional program, this means that we have actually 6 counties that we work with, and Lancaster is one of those 6. We work with approximately 96 different school districts, and we work with the homeless liaisons in those school districts, Lisette being one of those wonderful liaisons that we have and have a pleasure working with on a regular basis. But our primary role is to ensure that students who are displaced are identified by the public school districts and all barriers to their education are removed. We provide a significant amount of technical assistance to our school districts in regards to assisting with identification of students experiencing homelessness, helping determine eligibility for services under the McKinney-Vento Act, training school staff and community agencies on the red flags of homelessness, and ensuring that families are aware of their educational rights when they lose their home. We also are advocates for families. Lisette brought up the topic of disputes, and once in a while there is a dispute between the school district and the family, and we will work to navigate that dispute with those 2 entities. We also prioritize outreach in the community and build partnerships with homeless service providers, early childhood programs, higher ed programs, many other agencies in the county.
Thanks.
Sure.
Barbara, can you tell us about the National Network for Youth?
Yes, thank you for having me today. The National Network for Youth is a national organization, and we focus on youth and young adult homelessness, primarily ages 18 to 24. We do that in 2 different ways, primarily, one being the legislative advocacy. So we work at the federal, statewide, and local level to change systemic barriers to runaway and homeless youth population. But we also engage and prioritize our community work too. So we kind of see that it's important to make sure that we're doing both, that we're working with the people who are on the ground, the community members, and we do that with a very big value and emphasis on youth engagement and empowerment. And so many of the communities we engage with, we help establish or support an existing youth action board. And this gives young people an opportunity to have leadership roles in their communities and to really speak into what changes really do need to happen in the system, with services providing, making sure that you know what resources are in the community. And so that's primarily the work that I do, is the community level work.
Thanks. Yeah, and Donnie, this prompts my next question is, what is the Lancaster Youth Action Board, and how did you guys get started?
Well, I'll start with a little bit of the intro and then I'll transition over to Donnie. But we started working with the Lancaster Office for the Homelessness Coalition, or O4C. They were invested in receiving or applying for federal HUD or the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development dollars, which requires youth engagement and youth action boards. So they were engaged, they were interested in the practice and interested in bringing us in for that. So as a result of recruitment, building a mentoring system that has proven really successful, we've had 3 members that have been with us since June of last year, and they've been engaged throughout this past year. And so that's kind of where we really started with the work.
And so when I joined, I just saw like an ad that my one manager showed to me at the apartment that I live at. And once I joined, it was like the best thing ever. And it's like we advocate for the young voices of homelessness and just listening to them to like help try to end this issue. Like, it's a really big issue.
Yeah, thanks, Donnie. Can you tell us a little bit more about your experience and connection to youth homelessness?
Yeah, so I got connected with homelessness by being homeless myself. I was kicked out by my parents and I went straight to a shelter. And honestly, homelessness is a bad thing, but being at the shelter that I was at, I had a decent experience and it wasn't that big of a hardship for me, thankfully.
And so you started in the shelter, and now he's currently living in a permanent supportive housing.
Yes,
So he's got an apartment of his own.
yes, I do.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Lisette, what are the current trends that you're seeing in student homelessness in our area?
So the biggest trends that we have are students are becoming displaced. If we're talking about unaccompanied youth, it can be due to family conflict, parent deportation, um, undocumented students that have come into our district. We do have, there's been a big uprise in that, and specifically with parents or guardians of other countries that are sending their children over by themselves in the hopes that they'll receive some type of services and maybe staying with like extended friends or family for a period of time. Um, Safety concerns and where CYA has to get involved. That is a huge one. Incarceration of parents as well.
Yeah, yeah, and based on this trend that we're seeing, I mean, this clearly has a huge impact on the students that
Yes.
that are living in the midst of it, like you described in your presentation. And so, like,
Mhm.
how does experiencing homelessness affect affect future life outcomes?
So what would happen? I mean, obviously, when you're on your own and you're underage, you lack that adult supervision or that support, and you might not know what the resources are and what's available there to you. And there's a sense of like defeat there, you know. And then also specifically within Lancaster, there aren't a lot of options for our students if they're by themselves to be able to go to. Currently, right now, Lancaster County does not have a shelter put in place for any students that are coming as McKinney-Vento or undocumented or receiving or experiencing homelessness for them to be able to go to on their own. The closest one right now is in Berks County, and that's Mary Shelter. So that's a huge barrier for us because we continue to see an uprise in numbers for our unaccompanied youth.
Barbara, what are the long-term implications if we're looking like at society, like social inequality, economic mobility, like what does that look like in the big picture?
Yeah, unfortunately, the issues you face in your childhood or young adulthood can follow you into adulthood systems. And so youth who experience homelessness as children and youth or even young adults or have a higher likelihood of experiencing that as adults and chronically in the future. And because of the same reasons that Lisette mentioned in her PowerPoint presentations, if you have that lack of family support, or you have a family that is unstable, lack of education. And so individuals who face educational hardship, they're not obtaining education, they may not receive their diploma. And unfortunately, even though there are resources to help ameliorate that, that can really go a long way with kind of downgrading a person's confidence. And so I find with many of the young adults that I meet, they want to take on opportunities and you hand it over, but they still have a lot of barriers like trauma and confidence issues that allow them to say yes, right? Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can participate in this. And so, and it just kind of builds on trauma. It's kind of a
Mhm.
snowball effect. And so even though you might have an issue that you face as a child, if you're kind of stuck in the system, it can kind of snowball itself. So we're looking at um, it's a system that that's really difficult to get out of with that. And so a lot of our youth and young adults, it can take a lot to not only just participate and share their voice, but we are still doing active support services and making sure that they're getting their needs met in various ways too.
If I can just add on to that, I just also think that there's so many students that are out there that hide the fact that they might be experiencing some type of homelessness, or they're couch surfing, going from place to place for fear, that they'll end up in that system. So they would rather hide their status than figure out what the next steps are going to be, or to get CYA involved as well, and then possibly go into foster care system.
Yeah, and then we also run into the problem they're hiding it, but they may not even know that they're homeless or feel that they even fall under that because, oh, I have a place, I'm staying with a family member, or I'm staying in my car, I'm stable, I'm safe, and so they may not even identify that. So you've got two different populations, a few different populations around even just identifying it. And so I think overall at the federal, statewide, and local level, we're definitely under counting the amount of youth and young adults that are facing homelessness. And that obviously presents a big problem when we're going after funding, when we're asking for systemic changes, because many communities don't recognize that this really is a bigger problem than it really is.
Yeah, Donnie, I want to follow up with, can you tell us about like what unique challenges have you seen that youth face when they're experiencing homelessness?
Well, the big main one that I faced was mental health issues because I was at a place that I was not familiar with anything, and I had really, really bad anxiety where I just had breakdowns every day. And another issue for me is that I'm part of the LGBT community, and in that shelter, you run into people who are not so kind about that. And also, an issue that I really face is needing the documents that are very important to like start up and help yourself, like getting a job. You sometimes need those important documents, which I did not have, and I had to try to get them somehow in order to like start up and start helping myself.
Thanks. Thanks. Melissa, we have a question from the Q&A. So thanks for the audience for submitting some Q&A questions. Please feel free to take advantage of that to send questions to us. We'll do our best to get you answers. Yeah, so Melissa, the question that came is can you tell us more about the liaisons in our Lancaster County school districts, and how many liaisons are there, and what does that look like?
Well, under the federal law, every school district across the country has to have a homeless liaison. And that can look different depending on the school district. School District of Lancaster has an entire program with Lisette being the homeless liaison. In other school districts, in smaller school districts, that liaison may have multiple roles, and being the homeless liaison is one of many roles. We have Lancaster County has wonderful districts who work very hard to support their families that are experiencing homelessness, and a lot of times, if they have a homeless liaison with multiple roles, they will also have a team approach to their homeless support program, which means they may have an administrator as technically as the homeless liaison, and then they will bring in other entities within the school district to support that program. It could be the transportation director, it could be food services, it could be the social worker, guidance counselors. The other thing that they will often do is that they will dedicate a particular individual in each school building to act as a liaison for that district. But overall, a school district has to have one official homeless liaison dedicated to their district.
Yeah, and to follow up, is there a way that people can easily find out who that liaison might be in their district?
Yes, there is. The Department of Education, Pennsylvania Department of Education, they have a directory, an online directory, and that directory is updated regularly. I can give you the link for that when you follow up afterwards.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, and to the audience, we'll just remind you that we'll send a follow-up email that includes links to the resources that get mentioned over the course of our conversation. So we'll be sure to share that link. Um, Donnie, we have a question from an audience member that came in. That what keeps you and your fellow youth advocates going?
For me, a lot of like personal connection to people, because before I joined the YAB, I was a pretty closed off person and I didn't really want to talk to anyone. I usually stayed in my room all day. And now I feel a lot more confident in my social skills. And I think just having connections with people really keeps me going and helps my mental health.
Yeah. Well, I have been some of the activities you've done this past year, but
Oh, yeah, I did. I'm a lot more active now too. We had a blanket drive, like making blankets for homeless people. I went to DC and talked to like some really important people about issues on homelessness, and yeah, it's been a lot that I've done.
Thanks. Yeah, Lizette, can you tell us a little bit more about specific support systems and resources that are available for students and families?
So on a school level, or are we just looking?
I mean, at the school level, but then also, that intersection between, the school and the wider community.
So on the school level, I think it goes district by district. And what Melissa did mention is that every single district does have a liaison that acts as an advocate, and the needs are different, I guess, based on the number of students that they're currently supporting at that time. So for us here in Lancaster City, again, as we do look at the family in its totality, but our main focus is our kids. So we can support with getting birth certificates if they need to, their social security cards, making sure that they have their transcripts and their immunizations to be able to get into school. We provide basic needs such as, I guess, shampoo, conditioner, hygiene products, things of that nature. We give out winter coats, sneakers, undergarments, socks, whatever we don't have that's readily available to our students and our families is where we reach out to our Lancaster community to be able to get that support. Because at the end of the day, we are an educational institution. So we can give it all out, but we also could make sure that we get them connected to the right person and try to just be more person centered. We don't want to ever have to say, I don't have it, and just say, you have to go here, you have to go there. The biggest thing that we want to do is make sure that we are creating intentional and positive relationships with our families and our students as well, because they're coming to us very vulnerable and they're feeling defeated. And what we don't want to happen is for them to have to go from place to place to place to place to share their stories, because it took a lot for them to open up their mouths and just say, hey, this is who I am and this is the help that I need, and for them to be dismissed to have to share their story all over again someplace else. That's not what we want to do. We want to be able to get all that information, for me to be able to connect with that community resource and say, hey, I'm sending this person along the way. This is what their situation is. What can we do to work alongside each other to make sure that they're getting what they need and they're supported?
Barbara, what kinds of preventative measures can be implemented to help reduce the likelihood, for youth experiencing homelessness?
I think developing and really taking a critical look at the safety net that a community currently has. So Lancaster has a great resource network. But I think that our young people still struggle knowing where to get help. And then if you have a community that's focused on a certain area of social determinants of health, they may not know about the resources or eligibility requirements in another area. So I think really individuals coming together, doing some process mapping, and really taking a look at what does it look like for young people to approach a doorway for help from the very beginning to how I even hear about it, to the very end when that youth transitions out or transitions hopefully into a good outcome. Some other things is really looking at a creative, affordable housing option. So host homes is a growing trend in a number of communities in lieu of housing. It's not as restrictive as saying re-entering foster care for many in our foster care community. Making sure that we're looking at accessibility and disability as part of this population, because even though they are young and 18 to 24, many of them are still have and currently have disabilities that impact their quality of life and can make it difficult to live in a variety of different systems, or even access a variety of different things. So I think another thing is really looking at empowering practices, opportunities for them to engage in leadership development, workforce development, anything I find that doesn't necessarily always go back to these are your problems, this is what you're doing wrong, but let's really look at how can I get you in front of people to talk, how can I get you to DC to experience horizon building opportunities, because again, many of our young people and don't see themselves in a meeting. They don't see themselves in the community talking to their representatives, even though literally anyone can. And so the more times we can really build that horizon for them and help them picture themselves in a different scenario, I think is really helpful. I think where we get into trouble is when a lot of our interactions are focusing on this is what you're doing wrong, right? No one really wants to engage with that. I don't like to engage with that. And so I think it's really, how do we get them to start having fun with us again? And I think that's a big draw with the Lancaster Youth Action Board, even though it's been a lot of work. Hopefully they're also having a good time, and that's why they're coming back. And then finding really strong connections. So we wouldn't be here today without our strong support. Ashley, who has been a mentor, volunteer, and is able to dedicate that time to meeting with them individually, addressing their needs. So I think those can go a long way with prevention.
Melissa, what are, like, since you have this you have a real regional kind of perspective, like what are there some success stories or best practices from other communities that you've seen in your work?
Sure. We do have some success stories, and what we have seen is that all the success stories consist of a multi-agency collaboration, and it's something that would that type of collaboration is something that would wrap around the student and the family who's experiencing homelessness to provide whatever necessary support they may need. To help with this, one of the things that our program has done is that we've incorporated an outreach specialist program. These individuals have built relationships with the school districts, homeless liaisons, and the service providers in their counties. At this point, we have an outreach specialist in 4 of our 6 counties. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have one in Lancaster County. We did for a little while, but that program ended. They're a wonderful resource for these families, and they're a great help for the school districts. They help that they will work one-on-one with the families or with an unaccompanied youth, and to navigate the resources in the area. They're well versed in the resources in the community, and they assist the families in accessing those resources. I do have an example if you would like to hear that from one of our specialists. It's from a different county. And it was, she got a referral for a family of 5 that came into the country through from applying for asylum. And the family had 2 children who were preschool age and a teenager with significant medical special needs. And they basically came to the country with absolutely nothing. And the outreach, she received a referral from one of the agencies in that particular county, and she met with the family, quickly recognized what the extensive needs were. And through a tremendous amount of outreach, I believe she worked with 12 different service providers in the county to help this family. And she was able to assist with food, shelter, clothing, hygiene supplies, bedding, winter items, educational items. She was able to help with a family get medical interventions for the teenage child who needed to see a specialist. She was even able to uh, set up not just case management services, but also legal assistance for the family to work on their immigration status and the ability to gain some employment. And the parents themselves they were strong advocates also for themselves and for their children. And I believe it took maybe 3 months of a lot of work in the community. And but about 3 months after arriving in this country, that family recently, probably about a month ago, got access to an apartment. They got keys to an apartment. The mother has a small business of her own, which is starting to slowly thrive. The father is employed. All the children are in school. The one child has gotten the medical assistance that he needed, and overall, the family feels well supported by the community. I feel like this is a perfect example of many agencies coming together and working with one point of contact. I think Lisette touched on this, that it's hard for them to go from agency to agency to agency, and being able to work through one point of contact is a great benefit for them.
Yeah, so Melissa, yeah, so is like in your estimation, is that one point of contact, is that the most essential thing?
I think it's a big part. Yeah, I think it gets very overwhelming for these families to figure out where they need to go, who they need to talk to, having to retell their situation over and over and over again. And I think a specific point of contact who can advocate for them and direct them where they need to go is a great help.
Yeah, Lisa, we've had I think this is a question that is targeted toward you that came in our Q&A. And yeah, and the question is, yeah, do you make referrals for youth who are undocumented for SIJS or VYG guardianships?
I'm not exactly sure what the acronyms, if they can tell me.
Yeah, like, yeah, maybe we can make the question a little bit more general about like how do you and your program like make referrals and connect students and in those kinds of potential like legal kinds of situations
Okay.
around status.
So each one of ours, like for referrals specifically to our program, our district is blessed enough to be able to have a school social worker in every single one of our buildings, right? So we work alongside them because they directly meet with those families and those students on a daily basis. And if they feel like there's something off, like, when people say, if you see something, you should say something, and some of those like underlying factors, they will reach out to us. In addition, we work alongside, we have one point of contact for each one of our shelters. So when a new family comes in with school age and non-school age children, that gets immediately sent to us. For our documented students, we work with the refugee center, and we have some community educational liaisons within our district as well. And we also work with Church World Services.
Thanks. Yeah, and in the intervening time, John, who wrote the question, followed up and said that he was referring to special immigrant juvenile status, and it's a specific visa for youth who are unaccompanied.
Yes. So
yeah.
we'll connect with refugee and Church World Services for that.
Yeah, John, thank you for writing back quickly with the clarification. We appreciate it. Yeah, Lisa, I have one more follow-up that's related. Another question came in about how language barriers may come into play in the work that you do. So like,
It's huge. Our district alone has over 70 identified different languages, right? We do have a resource. We use Language Line, and everyone within our district has the ability to utilize that resource, which is call in to Language Line to get anything translated in that specific dialect or language.
Thanks. That sounds like an incredible resource. Wow. Yeah, like turning to look at policy and decision making. Barbara, can you tell us like what concrete steps can we take to affect policy?
I'm glad that you asked. There's some really concrete things that are happening right now at the federal level. There's the Runaway Homeless Treatment and Prevention Act, Trafficking and Prevention Act, which really works to improve upon the current Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, giving it more federal dollars, extending stays, allowing more beds for youth shelters. There's also the Homeless Children and Youth Act, which would work to unify the homelessness definition across federal entities, which is huge. Everyone working under the same definition, so that way there aren't the roadblocks of eligibility. HUD is counting one number, the Department of Education is counting a different number. So hopefully that will also help us get an accurate picture of that. The Pennsylvania level, there is a Pennsylvania Advocacy Committee to end youth and young adult homelessness. They meet monthly. We are currently working on several bills, one on helping with access to vital documents with driver's licenses, ensuring that there are homelessness school liaisons. There's also a big push right now to increase McKinney-Vento funding, and that's actually being pushed by our very own Representative Smith Waddell. And so get involved at the state level. If you want to know how to get involved, you can contact me. I can definitely make sure that email address is in the resources, because I can get you connected to all three levels of it. And at the local level, definitely, and have conversations with young people. And we can start we do have a Lancaster Youth Homelessness Initiative as well. I happen to be a Lancaster resident as well, so I'm definitely in the community to have conversations, one-on-ones. And so I think at the local level, for me, if you are currently looking for something very accessible to do, mentor. That's one of the biggest indicators of success for young people, is really being there for them, and giving them opportunities to speak, helping them navigate the system, and having someone there that's not necessarily paid to be there can mean a lot to a young person when you're looking around the table and you're wondering who really is in my corner, who can I call at 8 p.m. or later when I need something. And so I think that's the biggest thing, policy, getting involved, but also mentoring in any way that you can are huge ways you can get involved.
Thanks. Donnie, how can youth more fully participate in decision making that's directly involved about addressing homelessness?
So I think the biggest thing is giving them a voice, like giving them the spotlight to give their ideas, share their story. Because most of my life I was a shutout, and now I'm like talking, sharing my story, and it's helped me out a lot. And giving them like a family environment space, like we're all nice to each other and we make friends with each other and all that, to create that like inviting space for the person to just speak out and all that, and giving them compensation for their ideas and their voice and all that is really important. And for me, having a mentor like Ashley really helped me to break out of my shell and do more things.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your reflection. Melissa, I think when I target this question to you, that like over the course of our conversation, even like in the last 5 or 10 minutes, that we're really kind of at this intersection between like large scale programs and direct impact on specific people's lives. And I'm wondering, like, how do we measure success? The success of interventions and support programs.
Measuring success can be difficult. With our particular program, every school district's the McKinney-Vento programs in every single school district. The liaisons are required to track the needs and supports that they provide the students that are experiencing homelessness. Lisette's did a wonderful job at talking about the numbers of students that they have that are experiencing homelessness and are in need. But part of that tracking is also what they're providing. And the Pennsylvania Department of Education also has a robust program evaluation team. They gather and analyze the data to provide recommendations for ongoing student success. The state evaluation report can be found on PDE's website. with the most recent report being from the 2021-22 school year. And they come up with recommendations. That particular report had a number of recommendations, one of which was exploring creative transportation options for students who are temporarily living outside of the county. And Lisette went into the difficulties with transportation and things that they are doing. Another recommendation was to continue to build relationships with the local continuums of care, which helps with giving everybody a better understanding of what homelessness looks like in their county. And building better relationships with the early childhood programs, the preschool age programs, ensuring that school districts are identifying these younger students. Those are all recommendations that came out of that evaluation, and that is from how they're measuring the interventions and the success, at least at the school district level.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really clear, like, that through our conversation, like, that we're hearing that collaboration between and among nonprofit organizations, direct service providers, educational institutions. Like, it's that collaboration that's necessary. And a question that's come from the audience is, are you aware of any school districts who are working collaboratively with municipal government to address policy or regulatory issues around homelessness?
That's a good question. They work. Lisette, you look like you have you would like to answer.
We had been invited. Jalen and I actually last school year had been invited to Harrisburg on behalf of Representative Smith Waddell to speak about what homelessness looks like and the impact of it, and just our recommendation for change. And a lot of what Barbara had mentioned, specifically with finding a universal definition that encompasses all different facets of homelessness and not just specific. I think it's a basic human right to be able to get what you need. And it shouldn't have to be a question about funding as to whether or not, like, you're going to get services. So, yeah. And I've also sat on Representative Waddell's subcommittee just to address this a little bit more, as well as the coalition in Lancaster.
Yeah, thanks. Barbara, like, what role can businesses, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and community organizations together, like, what role can they play in supporting students and families who are experiencing homelessness?
That's a great question. I think with local businesses, being a big and integral part of workforce development. So ensuring practices that make your employment accessible, ensuring that you are ensuring practices that let people have low barrier to your employment. Offering opportunities for people to learn what it takes to run a business or to grow in your employment opportunities, pay them a living wage. I think so. Economic development is one way to really help prevent homelessness, because if I can make the income, and I'm sure Lisette and Melissa are facing this before, we're facing a population of people who they have gotten by in the past with the income that they had, are no longer at that threshold. So that threshold for making it is much higher now. And so making sure that, income and employment and people in Lancaster County can afford to live in Lancaster County, even when they're working as hard as they can. So I think making sure that you are taking stock and inventory of your practices of employment and making sure that it's accessible. The other thing that nonprofits can do is, again, let's create a safety net. Let's all be in communication about this population and ensuring that there's one point of contact, that one person who will share a resource over there, share a resource over there. I think even around SNAP benefits and food insecurity, not many people know that if you are a former foster youth after the age of 18, you're eligible for SNAP benefits, and the employment rules don't necessarily apply to you. So you can still receive help from SNAP. So I think that's, those little ways to work around the system are really important for everyone to know about, so that way they can be directed to that. So I think the biggest thing right now is doing an inventory and talking to the young people about what their experiences have been like, and finding creative ways to close those gaps. So it might be really easy. Some of the things, if we were just in communication, there are some easy ways to do that. Another way that can help is really looking at FYI vouchers or foster youth independence vouchers, and building the bridge for that to be happening in Lancaster, having those conversations, developing host home situations. A model that you can take a look at is through the PA Department of Aging. They have a shared housing model that they are trying to grow across the state. And so that's a host home model that could be successful, because it could match young people with someone who's over the age of 65, and they could be having a roommate situation or host home situation that will get them in the door and get them stable. And we all know that when we live with people for a while, it can not only just be a home situation or a housing situation, it become, I guess, to be corny, it could be a home situation where you build relationships with the people you're living with.
Hmm. Thanks, Lisette. Can I turn that question to you about the role that businesses and nonprofits and faith community can play?
So I think, Barbara, you got a lot of it. But I think one thing that I'm going to just say is, before we even go ahead and do that, we just have to be mindful about the population of students and families that we're serving. And I say that because I think all of us are born, we have like some type of implicit bias, right? About certain populations of students, families, whatever. And what I'm going to just kind of encourage is, you need to check your bias at the door, right? So what that pretty much means is, I say, someone experiencing homelessness, it does not discriminate. It doesn't matter how much money, how much or how little money you have. And it's for so many different reasons, and I think that everybody just has this, not everybody, but a lot of people have this preconceived notion that it's those who are on the street or they're panhandling. And that's not what I see on a daily basis at all. I see single moms, I see single fathers that are working to try and to provide and still having an education. So I think it's important for us to remember that if you're choosing to support this population of families and students, that you come with an open mind and you're kind and have an open heart as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We're rapidly reaching the end of our time. It's gone really quickly. But I want to go around and ask you each one final question. And I want to ask each of you, like, what's one step that we can take right now to support children and youth experiencing homelessness in our community? And I'll start with Donnie and Barbara.
Yeah, definitely, just connect with that community, do things like helping out, donating things, and just giving your kindness to the community is it's definitely an important thing. It's definitely the kindness of Barbara and Ashley towards me has definitely opened me up and made me more sociable and just more confident in myself.
Thanks.
Okay. I would say, we're in a bit of a break to give the Lancaster YAB time to get its feet on the ground. But join the Lancaster Youth Homelessness Initiative. And again, you can email me. We'll make sure you have that resource. So being a part of that, helping us have that conversation, being a part of that strategic plan, needs assessment work, be a part of that. And, you can join our mailing list. And so as resource needs come out, it's been really cool to see as our young people are working with us, they're getting compensated for their time, but their needs come up through conversation. And because there's a number of organizations around the table, their needs are getting met. And so we have one individual who's gotten school supplies. We've gotten one individual who was signed up for food stamps or SNAP benefits. We have one individual we helped to get a bank account for. So I think that being a part of those conversations and working hand in hand, that's just a really quick, easy way to be a safety net.
Yeah, thanks. Melissa, can I turn that question to you?
Sure. I think one of the first steps is building awareness, and your program that you're having today is a great way to start with that. If you're interested in building, making awareness more into the community, participate in the National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. That always happens in November. You're welcome to go onto our website for information on that or ideas for activities and that type of thing. But the other thing is, if you are wanting to do something right away, as I have been saying, that every single school district has a homeless liaison and a homeless program for their families. Reach out to those liaisons, see what they need. If there's resources that every school district can use, and reach out and see if you can be a resource for that district.
Great, thanks. And Lisette?
Piggybacking on everybody else, I think the biggest thing is just making sure that when we are supporting these students and families, that it is a person-centered approach. Because at the end of the day, it's not about me, it's about them, and it's meeting them at their needs and what they need. And it might look different for everybody. So that would be huge. And just allowing them the space to be able to be vulnerable and creating and establishing a trusting relationship.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for your reflection and conversation as we reach the end of our time. This is hopefully the start of something that will continue. One of the things that came up over the course of our conversation was we were talking about 211, and which is the social services hotline that folks can call. And one clarification is that 211 only pre-screens individuals for shelter services only, is one clarification. And one thing that we want to make sure that the audience knows is that if anyone who's watching or listening is currently experiencing homelessness or knows someone who is, that you can call 211 from anywhere to be connected to a resource navigator that can help to connect you to the services that you deserve and need. And so, with the close of our time, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Extend my thanks and gratitude to our panel for all the things that you've shared with us and the work that you're doing in the community that makes the lives of students and families and our whole community better every day. I want to extend thanks to our United Way marketing communications team that are doing tech things that I don't quite understand to make all this happen, which I greatly appreciate. To the audience, please watch for our follow-up email that'll be coming in a few days, which will include the recording of our conversation and links to the resources that Barbara and Melissa, Lisette, and Donovan referenced, and we'll get that to you. And finally, please visit United Way of Lancaster County on the web, follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Threads to find out more about upcoming events and ways that you can get involved. Thank you, and we'll look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.